We've all probably heard stories, or maybe even been in one of those classic arguments with a neighbor about where the property line is, right? It feels so small, so personal. But what's fascinating is that the very same type of conflict, that disagreement over a piece of ground, can scale all the way up from a simple fence to a fundamental fault line running through entire societies. Let's really get into this.
Just think about that for a second. What happens? Because land isn't just dirt. It's our security, it's our home, it's how we make a living. And when that gets threatened, the consequences can be, well, they can be explosive. So, what are we really talking about when we use the term land conflict?
Well, this definition from Wehrman really nails it. Notice the words social fact. It's not just a private fight, it's something that exists within a community. And at its core, it's about at least two groups having totally different ideas about who has the right to the land. We're talking about the right to use it, to sell it, or even just to say who can and can't be on it. It's a fundamental clash of interests. So what lights the fuse on these clashes? Well, it's almost never just one simple thing. It's usually a really complex web of systemic failures and human pressures that kind of create the perfect storm for a dispute. Let's unpack the two big categories here.
So, first up, you've got what we can call systemic failures. This is when the institutions we're all supposed to rely on just break down. Picture a place with constant political instability, or worse, corruption where powerful people can just grab land. Then pile on a legal system that's full of loopholes or has laws that literally contradict each other. And for the final touch, missing or totally inaccurate land records. It's a recipe for absolute chaos, where nobody is ever really sure who owns what.
Now, on top of all those institutional problems, you add immense human pressure. You have a population that's growing fast, which means more and more people are competing for the same limited amount of land. And when you have extreme poverty in the mix, a piece of land stops being an asset and becomes a lifeline. It becomes a matter of survival. All of this points to something even deeper. When the social trust and traditional ways of solving problems in a community start to fall apart, there's just nothing left to peacefully handle all these competing claims. And the cost of all this conflict is just devastating. This isn't some abstract academic problem. It has very real, very painful consequences that ripple out from the families involved to affect the entire society. The impact here is just so personal. You're talking about families literally losing their homes. People who have farmed a piece of land for generations can suddenly find themselves with nothing. And on a bigger scale, economic development just grinds to a halt. Who's going to invest in a place where you can't be sure who owns what? But maybe the deepest wound of all is social. The trust that holds a community together gets completely replaced by fear and suspicion.
Okay, so with the stakes this high, how do we even begin to resolve these conflicts? Well, the good news is there are established ways to do it. We're going to look at two very distinct approaches to finding that common ground. One is called mediation, and the other is arbitration.
So first, let's talk about mediation. The best way to think about a mediator is not as a judge, but as a facilitator. Their job isn't to decide who's right or who's wrong. It's to help the two sides actually talk to each other, to improve that dialogue, and to guide them toward creating their own solution. The power, and this is key, stays completely with the people who are in the dispute. And this really gets to the soul of what mediation is all about. It's about more than just solving the immediate problem. The real goal is to get the parties to work together, to collaborate. This process can actually start to repair badly damaged relationships. And because the final agreement is built on consensus, both sides have a real stake in making sure it actually works. And then we have arbitration. And this is a completely different animal. Here, the neutral third party, the arbitrator, acts a lot more like a private judge. Both sides come and present their evidence and their arguments, kind of like in a courtroom, but it's usually faster and more private. And then the arbitrator makes a final, binding decision. The goal here is not about building relationships. It's about one thing: finality. You present your case, an expert weighs all the evidence, and you get a judgment, it's often called an award, that is legally enforceable. This is a process designed to deliver a clear verdict and put an end to the fight. All right, so we've got these two very different paths to a resolution. How do they really stack up against each other? Looking at them side by side like this makes the choice between them crystal clear. This table really just lays it all out. And look at that first line, because it's the most important one. Who decides? In mediation, the power stays with the parties. In arbitration, you are handing that power over to the arbitrator. And that one single difference right there shapes everything else. It's why one process is collaborative and the other is adversarial, and why one is about repairing a relationship while the other is about delivering a verdict.
To put it as simply as possible, do you want to create a solution together with the other party, or do you want to receive a final decision from an expert? That is the fundamental choice. One path is all about collaboration, and the other is about getting a final judgment.
And that really leaves us with a final thought to chew on. When you're facing a conflict over something as basic and as emotional as land, what's more important? Is it building a bridge between the parties through dialogue and teamwork, or is it about drawing a clear final line in the sand? The answer? Well, it probably depends on the people, the place, and the problem itself.